Hello, everybody, and welcome to Friday Apocryphal Podcast, your one-stop shop for everything Friday Apocryphal and podcast. And boy, do we have a show for you today. Today we are covering Sirach chapters 1 through 3.
Wow, good job,
Yeah,
Lawrence.
I messed up there.
Yeah, you did. That's rare.
Well, now it is.
Yeah.
Used to happen all the time.
Yeah. You must be caught in that atheist Sunday school mindset because what we're covering today is in the Catholic canon.
Yes, absolutely. Sirach. So this is a very important book in the history of canon and the history of Scripture just overall.
Mm-hmm.
So it was quoted a whole bunch of times. There are references to it in the New Testament. There are references to it by church fathers, like citing it as an authoritative source. So this is a very important book. You know who has a great section on this? Lee Martin MacDonald in his book, The Biblical Canon. Mm-hmm. Great section on Sirach in that book. So I very much recommend that book overall. Today we're talking about Sirach, and I'm going to tell everyone a short story.
Well, before you do that, let me tell everyone a short story.
Okay.
Lawrence ordered us a copy of Sirach.
That was my short story.
Oh, tell your short
Before
story.
he has a short story, I have a shorter story, and it didn't come.
Yeah.
Yeah, not only... I ordered a copy of Sirach. I actually ordered the commentary and translation from the Anchor Bible. Mm-hmm. Commentary series, and it was canceled, but they didn't tell me that they canceled the order. So I was, pretty bummed about that. And then I ordered that again, and I ordered another translation because I thought maybe it would get here by today. It did not, sadly. So we're doing something that we don't really like doing, but we got to do it because the show must go on. We printed out the first 3 chapters.
Yep, we printed it out. We got it on paper.
Yep.
What translation is that, by
I
the
have
way?
no idea, man.
I love it when my
We don't even
resources get used. I love it.
Yep.
Yeah.
But maybe someone out there is familiar with Sirach and can tell us what translation it actually is.
Yeah, perhaps. I don't know. And I don't know why I printed that way either, which is strange. We're going to be using that until the commentary and translation come in.
Yes,
but at least that way we'll have 2.
Yeah, and at least there's a little prologue to Sirach in here, even though there doesn't seem to be extensive commentary. There are footnotes.
Yeah, the prologue is actually part of the book. Yeah. So it's not like a section by the translator. The book starts off with a prologue, and it's basically describing how this dude is translating the works of his father. Mm-hmm. So,
well, I'll read it once you
once we hop into it. Let's talk about Sirach. So that is of course the translation we're using for now, whatever translation that is. Then some commentaries that we have. We have Erdman's commentary on the Bible, and we have the New Interpreter's Bible, Volume 6.
Yes.
The commentary, yeah. So that's what we have. Let's hop into it.
Yeah, let's talk about what is the book, when does it come from, and why is it so relevant?
Okay. So when it comes to what the book is, another name, it goes by a lot of names. Mm-hmm. There is Sirach, there is the Wisdom of Ben Sira. There is Ecclesiasticus, mm-hmm. as many people know it. There are a whole lot of names. There's the Wisdom of Jesus, son of Sirach.
That's this one.
Yeah, so there are quite a lot of them. And, of course, it just kind of shares the same features as plenty of other wisdom literature in the Bible. So you know how we're currently covering Proverbs in Atheist Sunday School,
right? Which
this show is not. This is a different show. I know that.
Shit straight.
So it's very similar in form and function. So
Are you quoting Grave Titan there?
No.
Death in form and function?
I wasn't quoting Grave Titan.
It's the only quote I know. So
that's the only quote. Okay, whatever.
Off the top of my head? Yeah.
The stairs lead down in both directions.
See, I would have forgot the words verbatim.
All right, so
we, the people, hold these truths to be self-evident.
Us guys find stuff to be important. That's what we remember.
Anyways, so yeah, the title of the book in most Greek manuscripts identifies the genre and author. Of course, just the wisdom of Jesus, the son of Sirach. That's another name. On 2 occasions, later Jewish writers preface a citation from Sirach with the words, the one who spoke in Proverbs, which is very interesting. The 10th century Jewish scholar Sadia refers to Sirach as Sefer Musar, the book of discipline or instruction, and Rabbi Joseph calls it Misla ben Sira, the Proverbs of son of Sirach. So yeah, it goes by a lot of names, as you can clearly tell.
Now, is this the same Ben Sirach as the alphabet?
Well, it is the same one, but it is most certainly not written by that same Ben Sirach.
So this Jesus, son of Sirach.
Yeah, or right? Yeshua.
Right. Presumably this is the guy who's writing it down.
Well, that's the person whose wisdom it is, I suppose.
Mm-hmm.
But then his son is the translator of it.
Right. The son of Sirach.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeshua is the son of Sirach, but then the guy who's translating
grandson.
it is... Yeah, the grandson of Sirach is the translator of this work.
So we're getting the sayings of Sirach from
we're getting
his grandson's account of what his father told him.
No, we're getting the we are getting the sayings of Yeshua ben Sira, translated by
his
father. Yeah, his son. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, I know it gets a little. Yeah. Either way, so continuing on in this commentary, although the opening chapter of Sirach has not survived in the Hebrew manuscripts, a remark in Sirach 50:27 attributes the book to Simeon ben Eliezer ben Sira. And Sirach 51:30 adds, thus far the words of Simeon, the son of Yeshua, either or, who is called ben Sira. The wisdom of Simeon, the son of Yeshua, the son of Eliezer, the son of Sira. So it does get a little convoluted.
Yeah.
Yeah. The name Simeon means, seems to have come from Sirach 51 and 24a. The probable name of the author is Yeshua ben Eliezer ben Sira. Most Greek and Latin manuscripts partially confirm the identity of the author, reading the wisdom of Jesus, son of Sira, and the book of Jesus, son of Sirach, respectively. So it does get a little convoluted. It's not our fault.
And
blame you anyways.
So on the authorship, is it one author? Do we have reason to believe that it's one author?
From my elementary reading on this, it does seem like it is one author, yes.
All right.
Like you can talk about...
That's not normal for us, is it?
Well, like the thing is, you can talk about like a compiler, you can talk about an author,
sure,
and those would be different things. So the sayings would be from Jesus ben Sira, but then the translator, his son, added the preface.
Mm.
Yeah.
So we might expect this to be a little more consistent than some of the other books?
Yeah, I would say so. Definitely.
Like, that's what I meant, that you could feel that it was a single author and not a compiler or a group of authors or a recontextualizer or whatever.
Yeah, I mean, I would have to personally look more into specifics.
Well, he's asking about how you feel.
Yeah.
So you'd have to look into yourself.
No, I don't really want to look into myself.
Oh, you're afraid of what you might find there.
Yeah, I'll just crack my chest open.
Yeah, like, oh, that's not supposed to come out.
Either way, let's continue here. The book stands in the tradition of Proverbs and Ecclesiastes, especially the former. It consists, therefore, of brief aphorisms, maxims, and clever statements in poetic form having to do with practical daily existence, like the initial collection in Proverbs 1 through 9, which we have covered.
Yes.
Yeah, we got that one down. The sayings in Sirach frequently make up brief paragraphs on a particular topic. And you know what? It's actually way better set up than Proverbs, because Proverbs is really jumpy, right? This one is way less jumpy. Like the topics are in sections, which is really nice.
Yeah.
Either way, where was I? The subjects range widely, extending from inner feelings like a sense of shame to external behavior such as slander, from deeply religious acts of charity to self-serving conduct at banquets, from proper attitudes towards money to the disgrace of being reduced to begging, from kinds of friends to the trouble occasioned by bad daughters, and much more.
Well, remember, if you like what we do, pay us. Reduced to begging.
Okay. Anyways.
Yeah. Well, we did get that in Proverbs already.
Yeah, definitely.
The kind of friends that you're supposed to keep, because there was a long warning about hanging out with ruffians who go out and commit violence.
Yeah, those ruffians.
And the way they committed violence was so weird. I remember that. It was just anyone, the first guy or whatever.
Well, yeah, I mean,
I think go out and commit violence anywhere, just to commit violence, not for any reason.
Yeah, I think, in general, it was very hyperbolic what we were reading in Proverbs.
Yeah,
but yeah, it did
more
say that
cohesive.
Yeah,
right?
This one is much more cohesive.
Excellent.
So let's talk about the historical setting a bit, shall we?
All right.
So luckily, we finished 1st and 2nd Maccabees.
Yes.
Which this is
synchronicity, folks. We've done things in order somewhat enough.
Kind of by accident, honestly.
Accident. Yeah. That's what synchronicity is.
A prologue introduces the Greek translation of Sirach. Ben Sira's grandson, who rendered the Hebrew text into Greek for the Jewish community in Egypt, gives the precise date of his arrival in Egypt as the 38th year of Euergetes. That epithet was applied to only 2 rulers, Ptolemy III, and I'm probably pronouncing it wrong, Ptolemy III Euergetes, and Ptolemy VII Physcon Euergetes II. Wow, that was one whole name.
Yes.
So the first one was 246 to 221 BCE, and then the second one that I mentioned was 170 to 164, and also 146 to 117 BCE. Only the latter king held office long enough to meet the translator's specified 38 years. The date, 132 BCE, therefore, marks his entry into Egypt. The translation was completed after the death of Euergetes II in 117 BCE. Note the participle synchronasis, which ordinarily implies simultaneity. Hence, I was there as long as Euergetes reigned. So Ben Sira lavishly praises a high priest named Simeon, son of Yochanan, called Onias in some Greek manuscripts.
Oh, yeah. Shit. We just covered Onias the other day.
Yeah. So yeah, he was a key figure in 2nd Maccabees. Yeah. So let's get into a little bit more here. From 219 to 196 BCE, Simeon II was high priest in Jerusalem. So assuming that Ben Sira lived during Simeon's tenure as high priest, when did he die? One thing is certain, he does not mention the social chaos that erupted during the Maccabean revolt against Syrian oppression in 167 BCE, although that seethed for some time prior to open resistance. So, yeah, there was, as we learned from Maccabees, there was a lot of push for this stuff beforehand.
Yes.
So, a few allusions in Sirach may suggest the volatile situation. In 50, 52 to 26, Ben Sira voices contempt for Idumeans, Philistines, and Samaritans. And in 7, 4 through 7, 40, 25 through 26, and 51, also 23 and 24 in the Hebrew text, he may criticize contenders for the office of high priest. Finally, the prayer for renewed deeds of deliverance and signs of divine leadership suggests that Ben Sira thought that belief in the ancient experience of divine watch care could soon disappear from the collective memory. Nevertheless, such remarks fall readily within the historical situation envisioned by an activity for Ben Sira between 200 and 180 BCE. So then we can talk about some of the forms of expression. I already went through some of those, but they kind of have a very similar layout to Proverbs. Including the.
So we've got parallel phrases.
Oh, and,
yeah, parallel phrases, and there's going to be poetry sections. There's going to be
there's an instruction is another one.
Now, do they personify wisdom?
Yes.
Oh.
So and then some other literary forms. Besides the two base forms, truth statement and instruction, several other forms of literary expression liven Ben Sira's teaching. He includes 2 prayers, for example, and there's several hymns. There are 2 didactic compositions that actually resemble the hymns, but their mood places more distance between the singer and the creator. And these didactic compositions function as a defense of divine justice. There are also songs of wisdom. You're praising wisdom. Songs to praise wisdom. Praise songs for wisdom. Yeah. So Ben Sira affirms. On these songs. So moving beyond Job 28, where wisdom remains altogether inaccessible to human beings, and Proverbs 8, 1 through 36, where she is present alongside Yahweh as the first act of creation. Ben Sira affirms this earlier tradition, attesting to her innate inaccessibility in declaring her the initial creative act. At the same time, he insists that the Lord dispensed wisdom on all God's works and on those who love God. According to Sirach 24, wisdom searched the whole world for a suitable resting place until the Creator chose Israel as her place of residence. In Zion, she blossomed and produced fruit, inviting those who desired her to eat their fill. Ben Sira identifies wisdom with the Mosaic Law, making it accessible to everyone in Israel.
All right.
Let's see. He obviously uses ancient biblical traditions as well, to demonstrate his points. He embraces the entirety of the Hebrew canon, pretty much. And actually, we're going to talk about it a little bit at the beginning, the division there.
Does he embrace extra biblical stuff?
Well, there is a good amount of stuff that he cites, or maybe it's not necessarily a citation, but
like a reference in some form.
Yeah. But the idea here is of a sacred history. So then we can talk about Ben Sira and the Hellenistic world, because of course, this is after Alexander and after the world was being Hellenized, in fact. So occasional similarities between Sirach and Greek authors raise the issue of Ben Sira's dependence on popular Hellenistic philosophers. The comparison of death to falling leaves in 1418 and in the Iliad belong to folk wisdom. The image would naturally occur to anyone who gave much thought to the process of growth and decay in nature and among humans. Ben Sira proclaims at one point, he is all, or he is the all. This expression was common in Stoic philosophy, but Ben Sira could easily have arrived at such an understanding of God on the basis of his reading of Isaiah and Deuteronomy.
Well, I haven't read Isaiah, but if you want to talk about like monism, monism was pretty popular with the pre-Socratic philosophers. Like you got a whole slew of these characters like Heraclitus and Parmenides who argued in favor of material monism, not necessarily divine material monism, but in many cases, yes. Thales, for example, said all things are full of gods, and Parmenides was just like straight up pantheist, basically. He was talking about how like that which exists always has been, cannot be measured, is indistinguishable from any of its parts, can't be divided, etc. Right? So like there is a strong Greek tradition of monism. There's also a strong Indian tradition of monism.
That is true.
Like basically monism is, or non-dualism, right? Either or. It depends on which context you're talking about it in, or what specific kind of monism or non-dualism you're talking about, right? But that's basically the foundation of Indian philosophy, and maybe not most, but the Vedic and Upanishadic Indian religions also depend on the same metaphysic. So that's interesting because I haven't really seen much in defense of that in the Bible.
Yeah. I mean, there are definitely references because you go back to Deuteronomy. There is I forget the specific verse. I actually think this is it, 32, 39. I think that might be it. But it's one where it basically just says God is one. Mm-hmm. Either way. Unlike Stoic thinkers, Ben Sira did not equate God with the created universe. The Stoic ideal of world citizenship did not drive out Ben Sira's conviction that God had chosen Israel as a special heritage. Ben Sira's affirmation of physicians, for example, shows that he did not reject Greek ideas without careful consideration. Then there's a whole bunch of other stuff here, like Greek customs and ideas filled the air Ben Sira breathed, expressing themselves in many ways. A eulogy of ancestors, a notion of a rational universe with perfectly balanced pairs, human freedom and divine providence, dining customs, pride of authorship, and much more. There's also some Egyptian influence as well. But as we've discussed before, my guess would that be it's kind of secondary. It's an indirect influence.
Right. Well, I mean, speaking of Indian religion, this is after Alexander, right?
This is after Alexander.
Right, and Alexander made contact with India. And probably around this time, then the Indians have established trade routes to some capacity. So we might want to look out for, at least maybe not in this book, but in books which chronologically were written after this one, for some influences of Indian thought, too.
There was no reference made to any Indian religion here. But yeah, let's talk about some of the Egyptian influence. So the Egyptian instruction for Duaf, or the satire of the trades, ridicules considerably more occupations than the four Ben Sira mentions. Both Ben Sira and the Egyptian author contrast the scribe's profession with all other kinds of works. Their intent was to attract students to intellectual pursuits. Basically just argues in a satirical way that
scribes are great.
Yeah, pretty much. Scribes are the best.
Which they're not in every part of the Bible. In some parts of the Bible, scribes are not the best.
Make scribes great again.
Well, there's definitely a good section pretty early on that is like a direct reference to basically bad scribes, bad translators, stuff like that. It actually points out the difficulties in translation, which is really nice. So, now here's one that I just wanted to bring up because we just covered it in our reading of Proverbs. So Ben Sira's attitude toward women. and maybe we can just talk about this a little bit, the personification things. They may have acknowledged the threat presented by the notorious foreign woman of Proverbs, but they balanced this figure with wisdom, personified as a woman, and with the portrait of an ideal wife. To be sure, they also personified folly as a female and praised the wife in Proverbs 31, largely from the point of view of the husband whom she benefits. So that's, classic Bible stuff.
Oh, of course.
But yeah, also folly was, I forget what chapter it was. Was it chapter 7, I feel?
I feel
or
so
6?
as well.
I'm not sure. It was definitely last week.
Yeah. And it, basically said, folly's going to pretty much do all the same stuff that wisdom is doing, except it's going to lead to a whole bunch of horrible things.
Right. It only has the appearance of being successful.
Yeah. So the fact that these are personified again here speaks to something. All right. Now we can talk about Sirach and the canon. So the preface to Sirach, written by Ben Sira's grandson, refers to the law, the prophets, and the other writings. So we have the law, the prophets, and then we have just the writings.
Yes.
But it just says the other writings.
The other writings.
Yeah, suggesting that the first two divisions of the Hebrew Bible existed as distinct entities, and that the third group may or may not have been relatively fixed in this day. Ben Sira's praise of ancestral heroes supports this evidence, pushing the date back to the early 2nd century BCE for at least 2 closed units.
Well, for those who watched us go through Psalms, which thankfully we're done with,
I'm so happy.
it is definitely a book in the writings which has developed over time. Like we went over how there are Dead Sea Scroll Psalms that are in there. There are Septuagint Psalms that are only in there. It's not a singular cohesive book that like would have been recorded on a scroll. There are probably quite a few different Psalms collections. I assume at this time still.
There's a damn good chance, definitely.
Yeah, so we may see some psalm-like stuff that is from different versions, different scribed, versions of things, and then he would be paraphrasing as well. So it's like telephone.
Well,
It'll sound similar is what I'm saying sometimes.
Sure, but there are definitely going to be, things that line up with, because he took so much influence from these other writings. Yeah. It's definitely going to line up a lot.
Yeah, he'll be paraphrasing what we've heard before.
So, anyways, what was that? Yeah, Ben Sira's praise of ancestral heroes supports this evidence, pushing the date back to the early 2nd century BCE for at least 2 closed units, the law and the prophets. Although Sirach was excluded from the Hebrew Bible, it was frequently cited in rabbinic circles until the 10th century CE, occasionally introduced by the formula, "it is written." And as we will learn from... we've kind of...
was it not written?
There's that. That's a different one. But "it is written" is in the New Testament, when you are quoting Scripture, you say "it is written." Which...
it's not Scripture, right? But they do say "it is written."
Well, yes, exactly. So the rabbis who were writing it who were writing about it in the 10th century would have considered it Scripture. Mm-hmm. Nevertheless, Sirach is quoted 82 times in the Talmud and other rabbinical writings. So it's quite a lot. Recent evidence from Masada and Qumran confirms that the Jewish communities in the area of the Dead Sea viewed the book as sacred. For the copy from Masada and the 2 tiny fragments from Cave 2 at Qumran are written stichometrically, so they have the 2 parallel columns, just like that. Moreover, the inclusion of Sirach in the Septuagint and the Palestinian revisions of this Greek text and the Hebrew indicate its acceptance as sacred. The formulation of specific criteria for canonicity resulting from the debates associated with the so-called Council of Jamnia. I was going to bring a book for this. So a lot of people have argued that that's where Hebrew canon was made. Mm-hmm. But then Lee Martin McDonald, his position is that council didn't happen at all. Mm-hmm. So I'd have to look
Well,
back into that one more. That's something I wanted to do.
Because why is that his position?
Right.
Is there evidence that a council took place?
I mean, the thing is, I was reading through his book, and it seemed to be just an argument against other positions that just kind of you could call it circumstantial evidence. So his position was, pretty much like there's not enough here to go on. But I'd have to look into it more either way. I
guess a council would be hard to, unless you had the notes that they were keeping, right? If they were literally writing everything that they said down, it would be incredibly difficult to prove that a council happened. It's just a meeting of people.
Sure, but there are plenty of records of meetings of people, and then plenty of accounts of things that happened at those meetings. But either way, so yeah, resulting from the debates associated with the so-called Council of Jamnia and related discussions, automatically excluded Sirach if one limits inspiration to the period from Moses to Ezra. In addition, several aspects of the book are closer to Sadduceic teaching than to Pharisaic, and this may have influenced its checkered history. The situation is equally ambiguous in Christian tradition. The presence of the book of Sirach in the Septuagint implied at least a quasi-sacred character, but the translator of the Vulgate, Jerome, denied a place in the canon to the additional books, labeling them deuterocanonical. These books include 1st and 2nd Esdras, Tobit, Judith, the additions to Esther, the Book of Wisdom, Sirach, Baruch, the letter of Jeremiah, the Song of the Three Jews, Susanna, Bel and the Dragon, the Prayer of Manasseh, and 1st and 2nd Maccabees.
We'll cover all of them eventually.
We will, yeah. Augustine disagreed with Jerome's estimate, considering all the books in the Septuagint equally authoritative, which is interesting. So the author of the Epistle of James was particularly fond of Sirach. Other works of the early church used Sirach as a source of inspiration, including the Didache, the Shepherd of Hermas, and the Epistle of Barnabas. Those are definitely things we will cover once we are done with Old Testament stuff.
Yeah.
We'll definitely be covering those because they're pretty interesting.
All right.
The early Latin fathers included Sirach as one of the 5 books written by Solomon, and Cyprian accepted its sacred character. This position eventually prevailed at the Council of Trent. That's another council that I will eventually make a video about because I'm going in chronological order, and the Council of Trent was in the 15th century.
How do they argue that this is a product of Solomon?
Why are you asking me? I have no idea.
Because
wisdom,
you said you would make a video about it.
No, I'm going to make a video with the Council of Trent.
At the Council of Trent.
Yeah?
How do they come to the conclusion?
I'll figure it out.
You better figure it out. I'll be watching that video.
You better.
I'll read the script.
It would be rude if you didn't.
If you don't cover it in the script, I'm going to yell at you until you do.
That's fine. That's completely fair. And then we're talking about the text a little bit. Both the Greek and the Hebrew text contain titles for individual sections, which is rare, honestly. The sections were usually added by, translators.
Editors,
Yeah.
transcribers, yeah.
So
and usually they're not explicitly titled.
Exactly.
Yeah.
That's really just for our modern readers' benefit. Which I just found really interesting. In the Hebrew text, an extra psalm resembling Psalm 136 follows Sirach 51:12. We can apparently cross-reference. I don't have the Dead Sea Scrolls book on me. We could have referenced this 11Q PSA.
Wiley, leave books
So
here.
Psalm A. The sequence from Sirach 31 to 36 differs in the Hebrew, the Vulgate, and the Syriac from the Greek, which offers a less likely order at this point. So yeah, it could be. There's a chance it's just out of order. But either way, it's divided into sections, and the sections are not really the best because usually sections end with chapters.
Mm-hmm. But these end in the middle of chapters,
which is just it just makes our show annoying. It's not that it's the fault of the book itself.
Yeah.
Oh, wait, we're done with the chapter already? Yeah, see, that's going to happen like how many times?
Yeah, exactly. So it is going to be a little weird to follow, so we can't exactly follow the parts, the divisions that they have, but we have our own thing going.
Yep.
Yeah.
And, we will reference when parts start and stop.
Yeah, definitely. So we talked about Simeon and Onias. We talked about the transcription of this. So before we hop into the prologue, I do have a little bit to say about the prologue.
Okay.
So written in 3 elegant sentences by Ben Sira's grandson, the prologue demonstrates the author's mastery of Greek rhetoric to an extent not found in the rest of the book, where he translates in a manner that reflects the style of the original Hebrew being rendered into Greek, which would make sense because they actually in it talk about the importance of translation itself. The grandson, who does not give his own name, identifies the author of the book he is translating as Jesus or Yeshua, which is the Greek form of the popular Hebrew name Jeshua, and characterizes him as a learned teacher of sacred writings. The author views these texts as channels of divine instruction, and for the first time in extant literature refers to Scripture in the tripartite division that came to characterize the Hebrew Bible. That's a major reason why this is so important for canon studies. Mm-hmm. It's not just because it was so influential in Hebrew and then even Christian philosophy, but because it literally gives a reference to those sections, but it just says other writings, so it's not exactly clear. The law, the prophets, and the other writings. This initial sentence also mentions the law, the prophets, and the other books of the ancestors. The second sentence varies the expression further, mentioning the law, the prophets, and the rest of the books. Like this loose language, the third group remained open as late as the 1st century CE. The Greek text contains a suggestion of a discipleship in the reference to the other books that followed. Like Deuteronomy 4:6, the author of the prologue sounds a strong note of ethnic pride to encourage readers living in the Egyptian dispersion. And then, before I was mentioning the importance of translation to the author here. The reference to those who read scriptures echoes the technical expression for professional scribes entrusted with the preservation and transmission of sacred texts. So the whole thing is, there's obviously an issue here. Mm-hmm. He recognizes how imperfect translation is.
Yeah.
Which is good. That's a good thing. Maybe the readers of the KJV should give this one a shot.
Well, yeah. Unfortunately, it's not in the KJV. Otherwise, I'd have that open.
Yeah, you would.
Well, is there anything else that you wanted to?
No, you know what? We can hop right into the readings.
All right.
All that intro stuff is done.
Yes.
But we are probably going to have some more stuff to say once we get the other commentary in.
Definitely.
Yeah.
Without further ado, the wisdom of Jesus, the son of Sirach, or Ecclesiasticus. The wisdom of Jesus, the son of Sirach, also called Ecclesiasticus, is recognized as deuterocanonical scripture by the Roman Catholic, Greek Orthodox, and Russian Orthodox churches. The prologue of the wisdom of Jesus, the son of Sirach. Whereas many and great things have been delivered to us by the law and the prophets, and by the others that have followed in their steps, other writings, for which we must give Israel the praise for instruction and wisdom. And since not only the readers need to become skillful themselves, but also those who love learning must be able to profit.
By the way, this is not chapter 1, Chris. This is the prologue.
Right. It's also,
oh, man.
Yeah, it's also not in verse. It's just text. There's no verses. It doesn't start until chapter 1.
Yeah.
Yeah. But also those who love learning must be able to profit those who are outside, both by speaking and writing. My grandfather, Jesus, having much given himself to the reading of the law and the prophets and the other books of our fathers, and having gained great familiarity with them, was also drawn on himself to write somewhat pertaining to instruction and wisdom, in order that those who love learning and are devoted to these things might make progress much more by living according to the law. That was one sentence. You are entreated, therefore, to read with favor and attention, and to pardon us if in any parts of what we have labored to interpret we may seem to fail in some of the phrases. For things originally spoken in Hebrew don't have the same force in them when they are translated into another language.
Yeah, so the second sentence in Greek voices the anxiety felt by most, if not all, conscientious translators. The early rabbis formulated the problem concisely, attributing the witticism to Eliezer. Whoever translates literally is a liar, and whoever adds to the text is guilty of blasphemy. W.O.E. Osterley observes that the numerous instances in which the translator misunderstood the original show that his misgivings were fully justified. In his own defense, the grandson of Ben Sira charged the translators of the Septuagint with similar unintentional misrepresentation of the original sense of the Hebrew text. That translation, probably completed in the mid-2nd century BCE in Alexandria, was necessitated by the large Jewish population in Egypt. Because in Egypt, Egyptian Greek is Coptic also, so yeah.
Okay. For things originally spoken in Hebrew don't have the same force in them when they are translated into another language. Not only these, but the law itself and the prophecies and the rest of the books have no small difference when they are spoken in their original language. Sounds like if you don't read it in Arabic, you haven't read the Quran.
Yeah, something like that. Like, I would definitely say you would still have read it, but you do have to have commentaries on translations, I think.
I mean, the fact is
like where you could translate literally and stuff, yeah.
But the fact
like
is
a note.
that all language is inherently vague.
Well, thank you, Ruben. We know.
Well, as a consequence of all language being inherently vague, a slight increase in the vagueness of language usually doesn't significantly impact the reading of a text.
Sure, but it could be critical.
It could. Which is why we cover multiple translations
we
when we read in translation.
And we have a whole bunch of commentaries that give us textual references as well.
Yeah.
We don't just have random words intertwined. Usually they leave a blank space in those, which is kind of nice.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. For having come into Egypt in the 38th year of Energetes the king, and having continued there some time, I found a copy giving no small instruction. Energetes. That's a cool name. I thought it therefore most necessary for me to apply some diligence and travail to translate this book, applying indeed much watchfulness and skill in that space of time to bring the book to an end and publish for them also, who in the land of their travels are desiring to learn, preparing their character in advance so as to live according to the law. That's the end of the prologue.
So this commentary, the New Interpreter's Bible commentary, usually has these sections of reflection at the end of each section.
Yeah.
And usually we don't really cover it because it's more like, what can you gather from this today?
And usually that kind of sucks.
Yeah, exactly. So we usually don't cover it. But this one I thought was actually kind of nice. Possibly the most instructive feature of this prologue to Sirach is the apology for mistakes in translating the original Hebrew text into Greek. Concern over authentic rendering of one language into another has not disappeared from the scene, despite a lapse over 2 millennia. The difficulty involved in translation should temper heated contemporary controversies over the inerrancy of Scripture. I couldn't agree more, first of all. But, of course, you can just shout bias at me. Go ahead.
Okay.
Go ahead, people.
Oh, no.
Do it.
You're a human being, and in virtue of having an individual conscious experience, you have bias. How dare you?
That's a good question. How dare I?
How dare you?
I am disgusting. How
Hey.
about we hop into
Yep.
chapter 1?
Chapter 1. Let's do this. Chapter 1 of Sirach. All wisdom comes from the Lord and is with him forever. So God has presumably knowledge of everything forever.
Well, so wisdom here does not mean detailed knowledge of accumulated regulations or of human experience in the world, but the intelligent purpose of God that lies behind creation. God's wisdom far exceeds such accumulated knowledge. It exceeds even the sand of the sea and drops of rain, which humans cannot count.
Okay. Who can count the sand of the seas, the drops of rain, and the days of eternity? Who will search out the height of the sky, the breadth of the earth, the deep, and wisdom? You know what? We have. I mean, there's some deep sea stuff that we haven't really gotten to. But otherwise, this planet is pretty much well explored. We also have probes flying through space, areas where we're never gonna get out to, not in our lifetime.
Yeah, definitely not.
Right.
Yeah, check out that mesosphere.
Right. So, right, and we just watched the thing about how pretty much as far up as humans can go and jump out of something, they have done it. Right.
Yeah.
We have thoroughly explored the land, the sea, the skies. And so I think we satisfy that requirement.
We could always learn more, and we're always trying to learn more.
Right. I mean,
especially with that deep sea stuff.
We don't have perfect knowledge of it, but
we got a lot to cover when it comes to
right.
the ocean.
Right. Wisdom has been created before all things, and the understanding of prudence from everlasting. Verse 5, which is what... Well, it's not what I just read, but it's at the end of what I just read. It says, verse 5 is omitted by the best authorities.
But see, the thing is, we don't even know... I don't even know what translation this is.
I don't even know what translation it is, but it says that verse 5 says, the source of wisdom is God's word in the highest heaven, and her ways are the eternal commandments. Yeah, it looks like they still have female pronouns, so they're not saying that it's removed because of the female pronouns for wisdom.
They're not saying why it's omitted at all.
They're not saying why it's omitted at all, but they included it, so it's not omitted. Okay.
Yeah, but in the other manuscripts that they're talking about.
Right. To whom has the root of wisdom been revealed? Who has known her shrewd counsels? Then there's another verse that is omitted by the best authorities. It says, to whom was the knowledge of wisdom manifested? Who has understood her abundant experience? There is one wise, greatly to be feared, sitting upon his throne, the Lord. He created her. He saw and measured her.
So, when it comes to the fear of the Lord stuff, like obviously this stuff pops up in modern day Christianity all the time.
Right, and it's not something that you see in the Hebrew scriptures, really.
Yeah, really not. So, I mean, very little you see it. It comes up way more in Christian stuff. By the fear of the Lord, Sirach means reverence practiced in everyday living. What is in everyday living? What is, in fact, the beginning of wisdom? This term in the book of Proverbs often seems colorless and insipid. Sirach brightens it up, describing it as glory and exultation, giving gladness and joy and long life. The insipid term has become one of warmth, making peace and perfect health to flourish. And of course, that comes up later in the reading.
He poured her out upon all his works. She is with all flesh according to his gift. He gave her freely to those who love him. So wisdom is kind of like a material monism, right? It's in all things. Right.
In all humans.
Yes,
it says he poured her out upon all his works. So
Yeah.
every single thing in creation is in possession of the wisdom of God's design.
but it has to be given. But maybe it's not in possession of wisdom, but it's there. It's like underlying, and you have to attain that.
Right.
So, like when someone is following God, and then he can show you that wisdom.
The fear of the Lord is glory, exaltation, gladness, and a crown of rejoicing. The fear of the Lord will delight the heart and will give gladness, joy, and length of days. Whoever fears the Lord, it will go well with him at the last. He will be blessed in the day of his death. To fear the Lord is the beginning of wisdom. It was created together with the faithful in the womb. What's that supposed to mean? That the fear of the Lord is
supposed to be
what verse is that?
Inherent.
That is verse 14.
Oh shit! You're already at verse 14.
Yeah.
Oh, damn. Okay. Well then I got to look a little bit forward here, don't I?
Yeah. What? you got to keep up.
Yeah.
Keep up, Lawrence.
My bad, guys. There's no direct commentary on verse by verse commentary on verse 14. But there is a little bit here about what comes beforehand. Or actually, no, there is commentary on verse 14. In verse 14, Ben Sira expresses a concept that was regularly associated with the birth of a prophet or a special servant of Yahweh in Israel. So you can check Isaiah 44:24 or Jeremiah 1:5, and with royal births in Mesopotamia. In this view, God chooses special persons to carry out individual assignments, whether prophetic or royal. So yeah, that's nice. So then I'm going to expand a little bit about verse 13. The reference to a happy end to life does not imply anything beyond the grave, for in this respect Ben Sira sides with those who later formed the party of the Sadducees. He accepts the usual teaching about the end in the Old Testament, that a person dies and joins the ancestors in a ghost-like existence in Sheol, the body returning to dust whence it came, according to hollowed narrative. Ben Sira's reference to the dead being blessed lacks any indication of, actually you're not, okay, I'll just continue here. Ben Sira's reference to the dead being blessed lacks any indication of the one doing the blessing, whether God or the human survivors. I would think, though, it would really be only important if it was God.
Yeah. One would think.
Yeah. According to the wisdom teachers who composed the book of Proverbs, an intimate connection existed between morality and happiness, with rare exceptions. These exceptions became the rule for the authors of the book of Job and Ecclesiastes, and yet Ben Sira was hardly touched by their poignant attacks on traditional wisdom. Events soon after he wrote his book threw an even greater question mark on this optimism, for the frequency of martyrdom during the Maccabean revolt made it difficult to describe the end of such faithful ones as blessed. The author of Daniel 12:2 breaks sharply with the Hebrew tradition in a desperate effort to salvage divine reputation for justice and to provide comfort for those who either faced a martyr's end or grieved for someone who had.
Well, in Second Maccabees, there were quite a few martyrs.
Oh yeah, definitely. There were so there's a woman and her 7 sons, right?
Right.
So that's 8. And then there were 2 more. There was Eliezer, and then there was another guy, starts in the R, I forget his name.
I don't recall.
Rahim or something? Rahun?
Yeah, like Razzie.
Oh yeah.
Is that the guy that disemboweled himself and tried to kill himself 3 different ways?
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay, yeah, he was.
He was not
That's
blessed.
how I
at the
remember
end.
him. I don't remember his name.
He was not a blessed death there at all.
But there is that like eschatology where the dead rise and inherit the earth.
Yeah.
Right. So I guess that's blessed.
Eventually.
Yeah. I wonder if when he rises, his intestines will still be.
Maybe.
Yeah. Oh, well. She laid an eternal foundation with men. She will be trusted among their offspring. To fear the Lord is the fullness of wisdom. She inebriates men with her fruits.
Yeah, so this is kind of the same stuff from Proverbs, pretty much.
Mm-hmm. She will fill all her house with desirable things, and her storehouses with her produce. That's very vague.
Well,
She will fill her house with desirable things.
I mean, that's what you do with your house, right? You fill it with desirable things.
I don't know.
But the
man.
reference to storehouses, I think that's a direct reference there to Jacob.
You think so?
Or no, is it Jacob? No, Joseph.
Yeah, it was
Yeah,
Joseph
in
because
Egypt.
they had to prepare for the famine.
Yeah.
It may be a direct reference. It may be an indirect reference,
Maybe.
though. The fear of the Lord is the crown of wisdom. He making peace and perfect health to flourish. The remainder of this verse is omitted by the best authorities.
Yeah, they say the best authorities, like that means something. Can you just tell me the manuscripts? Like,
Oh, no, I said it shouldn't go there. Take it out.
Either way.
Apparently not, but the remainder of the verse says, both are gifts of God for peace. Glory opens out for those who love him. He saw her and took her measure. So this idea of measuring wisdom.
And that happens a lot. There are a lot of measuring motifs in prophetic stuff too, in revelatory texts especially.
And in like afterlife stuff with scales and
Actually, I'm going to reference that right now. The resemblances between this figure of wisdom and the Egyptian goddess Mat have been acknowledged for some time, especially the picture of her holding the Ankh, a symbol of long life, in one hand and riches in the other. That idea certainly resembles Ben Sira's description of wisdom's gifts. In addition, Egyptian wisdom emphasizes silence so much that the word becomes a technical term for the person or character. One who controls anger and is therefore the opposite of the heated person. Egyptian instructions also describe the good person as one who is like a tree with well-watered roots. And we've got the reference before about, what it's rooted in earlier.
yeah.
And they characterize wise behavior in terms of restraint, eloquence, timing, and integrity. The wise person thus practices self-discipline, speaks effectively at the appropriate moment, and declares the truth. And in verses 22 through 24, Ben Sira refers to self-control and the right time for speaking. The image of wisdom as a garland and a crown has its exact counterpart in Egyptian wisdom literature.
Okay. Egyptians. He both saw and measured her. This is God seeing and measuring wisdom. Mm-hmm. He rained down skill and knowledge of understanding and exalted the honor of those who hold her fast. There were some other figures who rained down skills and knowledge and understanding in First Enoch.
Yeah, there definitely were.
Yeah.
Yeah, but they weren't. They were not good.
No, they weren't.
They were very bad.
Very, very, very bad.
Don't be like the Watchers.
Ooh, don't watch them. To fear the Lord is the root of wisdom. Her branches are length of days.
Yeah, they use the whole tree motif again.
Tree of knowledge.
Tree of life. Yeah.
Which the Kabbalists go crazy with.
Oh, yeah, they love it.
Then verse 21 is omitted by the best authorities. It reads, the fear of the Lord drives away sins. Where it resides, it will turn away all anger.
Yeah, I got nothing on verse 21, so.
Unjust wrath can never be justified, for his wrath tips the scale to his downfall. A man that is patient will resist for a season, and afterwards gladness will spring up to him. He will hide his words until the right moment, and the lips of many will tell of his understanding. So I guess if what you say pleases the crowd and you don't talk that often, that means you're wise. But it really doesn't.
A man of few words.
Right. But it really doesn't
Good
mean
stuff.
that you're wise. It just means that you're popular, right? Because we've seen clearly that
Hey, I got a quote for you. Wrong.
Yeah. We've seen clearly that unwise people can be incredibly popular. It doesn't really matter.
I mean, it would be nice to be popular for being wise.
Yeah. But the reaction.
But if you've ever went to school.
Yeah, the reaction of large amounts of people to things that you say really doesn't mean that it's wise.
Okay, wise guy.
Oh, okay. A wise saying is in the treasures of wisdom, but godliness is an abomination to a sinner. If you desire wisdom, keep the commandments, and the Lord will give her to you freely. For the fear of the Lord is wisdom and instruction. Faith and humility are his good pleasure. So, literally, you don't have to think. You don't have to study or research. Just fear the Lord.
Well, then the thing is...
Because the fear of the Lord is wisdom and instruction.
Exactly.
Right? So, all the Christians that we argue with, you argue with more Christians than I do. But there's no point in arguing with them, right? Because fear of the Lord is wisdom and instruction.
Well, I mean, the thing is, that is an argument that is used by some Christians, like Saitan, for example.
Mm-hmm.
He refuses to discuss the Bible with non-believers because we don't hold it as authoritative.
Right.
So he's like, I'm not even going to talk to you about this. So even if I got a fucking PhD in biblical studies, he'd be like, nope, you're a non-believer. I can't speak to you about the Bible.
Yeah. So it's actively encouraging people to be close-minded.
That does happen.
Even though trait openness is associated with higher IQ.
You're probably right on that. I would assume that is right.
Yes.
AMA.
So something about the words here, the specific words that are used. So Ben Sira's deep piety comes to expression in verses 25 through 27, where the Greek words Sophia, Pieta, Pistis, of course, Sophia is wisdom, and then there's instruction. I'm just going to use the English translations. Faith, humility. They all recall venerable Hebrew terms for wisdom. So instruction, this is really written strangely. So they all recall venerable Hebrew terms for wisdom, hokmah, because there was the Greek words before, instruction, musar, and faithfulness, emunah, and humility, anawa. The noun emunah consists of active fidelity and passive trustworthiness, senses conveyed by various renderings in the Septuagint. It thus becomes clear that the word includes far more than the cognitive dimension. Mere intellectual assent expresses itself by means of appropriate action, as the author of the Epistle of James recognized. And Was that the end of the chapter?
No, not yet.
Oh, all right.
Don't disobey the fear of the Lord. Don't come to him with a double heart. Don't be a hypocrite in men's sight. Keep watch over your lips. Don't exalt yourself, lest you fall and bring dishonor upon your soul. The Lord will reveal your secrets and will cast you down in the midst of the congregation because you didn't come to the fear of the Lord and your heart was full of deceit. It sounds like something out of Alex Jones, right? The Lord will reveal your secrets and will cast you down in the midst of the congregation because you didn't come to the fear of the Lord and your heart was full of deceit.
Yeah, very Alex Jones.
Mimic.
Yeah. Ugh. Well, that is actually the end of
there you go.
the chapter, right? This next chapter is about the same length.
Yeah, they're not super long. We should probably divide all the stuff beforehand because
It was long.
once September 1st comes, we will be getting a translation of Jubilees from the Hermenia commentary series. Now, technically, the translation is already in here. It's already in our commentaries on Jubilees, but we would like to have a separate translation and a translation and an actual commentary.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it would just be easier that way.
Yeah.
Either way.
Easier. If you're enjoying the stream so far, by the way, give us a like, subscribe, share us around with your friends, family, neighbors.
And your dog.
Your dog.
Your cat.
Your cat's
your
dog.
Your goldfish also really wants to watch what we have.
Those extra dimensional beings that you're very confident are watching you, you should tell them about us.
Your dogs, cats, goldfish.
I mean, the whole family, really.
Mm.
So, chapter 2. My son.
Wait, hold on a second. Is there anything that you didn't read in the Eerdmans part already? For this section, there's not that much.
I know there's not that much. There's still some stuff I didn't read.
Okay.
Oh.
You say so.
Yeah, because that's for the whole first part, that section there.
Yeah.
So it extends through part of chapter 4.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Either way. My son, if you come to serve the Lord, prepare your soul for temptation. Set your heart aright, constantly endure, and don't make haste in the time of calamity. Cling to him and don't depart, that you may be increased at your latter end. Accept whatever is brought upon you. So yeah, more of the kind of extending your life sort of thing.
Mm-hmm. What verse is that?
That was halfway through verse 4.
Tell me when you get to the end of verse 6.
Okay. And be patient when you suffer humiliation, for gold is tried in the fire, and acceptable men in the furnace of humiliation. Put your trust in him, and he will help you. Make your ways straight, and set your hope on him. And that's the end of verse 6.
All right. So at the beginning of chapter 2, Sirach turns to the need for testing people who seek to serve the Lord.
Mm-hmm.
The need for such testing has already been examined at length in the book of Job. Here, Sirach counsels a steady, well-balanced attitude to life that will not give way to impetuous behaviors in times of calamity. Following the lead of the book of Job, Sirach advises patience in times of humiliation, accepting with calm faith whatever befalls you. Such testing is illustrated by mention of refining gold in a fire, an image popular with ancient Jewish writers. Indeed, verse 5 may well quote a traditional phrase around which Sirach has built this section on testing. That was from Eerdmans. In here, the NIB commentary, it says on this section, 1 through 6, verses 1 through 6 from this chapter. Adversity has the potential for unmasking such insincere religion. The literature on divine testing in the Old Testament is set within such a context, e.g. the offering of Isaac, the trials of Joseph in Egypt, and the afflictions of Job. Biblical texts frequently describe this testing in the language of separating impure dross from precious metal. The biblical writers maintain firm confidence that genuinely virtuous people will emerge victoriously in the end, just as in the worst-case scenario, Job. Only the author of Ecclesiastes resolutely refuses to view testing in positive terms. Perhaps also the author of Jeremiah's Laments. An important manuscript sets this unit apart by means of a heading, which reads, "On Patience." So this is a bit about patience and testing. It goes on to say from earliest times, I don't know how they would verify that. From earliest times.
Our earliest references, I suppose.
Yeah, right. This language of father and son was used in an educational setting to designate teacher and student. Sumerian schools also had a monitor who went by the title of Big Brother. No Orwell. At first, this familial language referred to kinship, but over the years, the terms father and son lost their original connotations entirely and came to designate teachers and students only. That is exactly how it functions for Ben Sira. One of the most difficult aspects of testing was the necessity of holding firm in one's expectation of promised gratification for faithful conduct, hence the necessity for encouraging words like Ben Sira's, where he says, "Trust in him and he will help you."
So it's interesting then, because I don't know if, I'm sure work has been done on this. I'm sure people have talked about it before. But the fact that this is called like the wisdom of Jesus Ben Sira. So would it be just the student of Sirach that we're talking about? Or would it be, in fact, the familial thing?
Well, you gotta wonder, because at this point, it's likely the actual familial connection, because the prologue specifically states that my grandfather.
Yeah.
Right? But otherwise, if it weren't for that, prologue, it would be vague.
Yeah. Yeah, I forgot that was specifically grandfather in there.
But that's a good point to bring up for Proverbs, though, because...
Well, because the thing is, Proverbs is... Yeah, because you get in Proverbs, there's my son or my sons.
Yeah.
And then there are parts where it seems to shift, like if you're talking to all your sons, and then it shifts to a specific one. So... Yeah, it's definitely something to talk about, but Proverbs is much older than this.
Right. Well, it probably is supposed to be a familial thing in Proverbs, but then you can have interesting apologetics like, well, when he says, my son, he's talking to one of the children that he had, who's eventually going to go on and become king. But when he says, my sons, he means you people of Israel.
Or my students.
Right.
Yeah. Either way, all you who fear the Lord, wait for his mercy. Don't turn aside lest you fall. All you who fear the Lord, put your trust in him, and your reward will not fail. All you who fear the Lord, hope for good things, and for eternal gladness and mercy. Look at the generations of old, and see, whoever put his trust in the Lord and was ashamed, or who remained in his fear and was forsaken, all of Israel, or who called upon him and he neglected him, Job.
Yeah.
Well, Israel, you could argue, wasn't always fearing the Lord, right?
Mm-hmm.
But I don't know, Job seemed pretty sincere in there.
Yeah.
So, sorry, Ben Sirach.
Well, a little commentary on that section there. It says, religious belief seldom coincides with brutal reality. And people always seem to be capable of interpreting even the most adverse circumstances as confirmation of dogmatic expectations.
Yeah. I agree. For the Lord is full of compassion and mercy. He forgives sins and saves in time of affliction.
So, is that the end of verse 11?
Yes, it is.
All right. So this next part that we're going into is forecasting disaster to people who are inadequate for life and expressing approval for those who fear in the Lord.
Inadequate for life.
So we're going to have a little bit of repetition in here. It's going to say, such repetition is a helpful aid to memory in oral teaching and is found in the Mishnah, as well as in non-Israelite proverbial literature. However, the question in verse 10 begs a very real question. Historians can easily point to people who did trust in the Lord only to be disappointed. Josiah, king of Judah, for example.
Yeah, that's a big one.
Yeah. Was faithful to the law and purified in the Jerusalem temple only to die prematurely in battle in 609. However, Sirach's answer is not one. And he backs this up later in chapters 44 through 50 by surveying the past history of the Jews and finding their massive support for faith in God.
Either way, let's hop into verse 12.
Yep.
Woe to fearful hearts, to faint hands, and to the sinner who goes two ways. Woe to the faint heart, for it doesn't believe. Therefore, it won't be defended. Woe to you who have lost your patience, and what will you all do when the Lord visits you?
Yes. So what is that? Verse 14?
It is.
Yeah. So for Jewish compatriots who consider Hellenistic thought and culture superior to ancestral traditions of the Jews, Ben Sira reserves the strongest language. 3 times in these verses, he utters the language of curse. Woe to, hoi oi, persons whose hands slacken in observing the Mosaic statutes and who neglect to lift them in prayer, occasion to the first of these harsh curses. The other 2 uses of curse accentuate cowardice and loss of nerve. All 3 refer to the body, heart, and hand, heart, and nerve, respectively. The Lord's reckoning to which Ben Sira refers is entirely this worldly. It manifests itself in various forms of sickness and disaster. The image of walking a double path, almost comic, underlies the absurdity of all attempts to reconcile Jewish and Hellenistic worldviews, according to Ben Sira. He was prepared to make modest compromises to accommodate those who valued Hellenistic ways. But that principle did not extend to matters affecting divine commandments concerning good deeds. He willingly adopted Greek views and practices without any real drawing the line. Perhaps the political situation permitted him such freedom that changed with the oppressive policies inaugurated by Antiochus IV. So Antiochus IV, who we just read about.
Yeah. It was that guy. He was that bad guy.
Yeah.
Those who fear the Lord will not disobey his words. Those who love him will keep his ways. Those who fear the Lord will seek his good pleasure. Those who love him will be filled with the law. Those who fear the Lord will prepare their hearts and will humble their souls in his sight. We will fall into the hands of the Lord and not into the hands of men. For as his majesty is, so also is his mercy.
Is that the end of the chapter?
It is, yes. That's the end of chapter 2.
All right. Well, I got a little bit of commentary on that, but also, if you're enjoying the stream so far, give us a like, share it around, check out our Amazon wish list and our Patreon and stuff.
Yeah. All links are in the description.
Yep. So according to verse 16, religious devotion arises out of desire to please God. The keeping of the law, suspect to those Jews who have fallen under Hellenism's seduction, issues from love for God. This theme will recur many times throughout the book. For now, however, Ben Sira endeavors to put the fear of God into his hearers and readers. The final couplet, in 2:18, evokes an episode in King David's life when he became vulnerable to divine wrath by, of all things, obeying Yahweh's explicit order to take a census of the people. That is not what happened.
Yeah.
So he disobeyed Yahweh's order to personally take a census of the people.
That is what it seems like.
Yeah.
And then, although we have a slightly different account in Chronicles, remember? Because in Chronicles, It was Satan. It was Satan. Yeah.
The enemy.
The Satan.
But that definitely isn't how it's presented
In Kings,
before.
no, definitely not, yeah.
Ben Sira quotes, not entirely accurately, David's decision to take his chances with God's wrath rather than endure 3 years of famine or 3 months of fleeing before enemies. Choosing a 3-day pestilence, David entertains the hope that Yahweh's unpredictable anger will give way before the reliable divine compassion.
Yeah, so if you guys remember that time when David had to make a choice, he was given an ultimatum.
Mm-hmm.
Leave the town for a little bit, have a famine for some time, or something else, right? There were 3 choices.
Yeah, and he has to pick one of them.
Yeah. Either way, he made a very bad decision. It was just a dumb decision. Why would you... Either way.
The appeal to this text, like so much application of Scripture to later situations, stretches it to the limits. For an innocent David awaits divine punishment, whereas Ben Sira appears to view dependence on Yahweh as a means of escaping wrath. In any event, he closes this unit with a pun on the Hebrew word from Exodus 34:6 for divine compassion, rahum, which he equates with God's name. So there's a Hebrew pun there.
All right, and that's the end of chapter 2. Here's this.
Yeah.
Yeah, we can shortly hop into chapter 3. And make sure you guys drop a like and subscribe, all that good stuff, if you haven't already. Because the likes are important, and the Patreon's important, the wish list is important. It's all important, so go do the important stuff.
It's all important.
Yeah.
Yep. And by that, I don't mean that every part of it is important, but it is all important.
It is.
Chapter 3. Hear me, your father, O my children, and do what you hear, that you all may be safe. For the Lord honors the father over the children and has confirmed the judgment of the mother over her sons. He who honors his father will make atonement for sins. He who gives up his glory to his mother is as one who lays up treasure. So this is obviously a reference to the commandment.
So, yes, it is. But there's something new in here that we have not really, hasn't really come up before.
Mm-hmm.
At least in this modern sense. Atonement.
Right. That is not part of the Jewish thing.
So something relatively new in Hebraic thought, the atoning power of good deeds and the amassing of credit in the heavenly record book, finds expression in verses 3 through 4. The emphasis on the efficacy of charitable acts arose as a consequence of the increased esteem in which piety was held during the 2nd and 1st centuries BCE. The Book of Tobit frequently acknowledges the positive... Flip, thank you for the $20.
Thank you very much, Flip. It says, smasheth thy like, dash, subscribeth, and ring thine belleth.
Thank you. That is so sweet. That is so inspiring, too.
Very, very.
That is
very
one of the most inspiring things I've ever heard.
Yeah. It's one of the better quotes we've gotten.
Yeah, it is.
Yeah. Well, thank you very much.
Yes, thank you very much. That is appreciated. So anyways, the emphasis on the efficacy of charitable acts arose as a consequence of the increased esteem in which piety was held during the 2nd and 1st centuries BCE. The Book of Tobit frequently acknowledges the positive correlation between acts and kindness and divine approval. So yes, this new fresh idea comes into play.
Yeah. More honoring your father and mother stuff here.
Yeah. And tell me when you get to 3:30.
Verse 30.
Yes.
Okay, I'll tell you in like forever from now.
Okay.
That's the second to last verse.
All right. Tell me when you get there.
Okay. Whoever honors his father will have joy in his own children. He will be heard in the day of his prayer. He who gives glory to his father will have length of days. He who listens to the Lord will bring rest to his mother. Some manuscripts add to those who fear the Lord. Some manuscripts add, those who fear the Lord honor their father, and will serve under his parents as to masters. Honor your father in deed and word, that a blessing may come upon you from him. For the blessing of the father establishes the houses of the children, but the curse of the mother roots out the foundations. Don't glorify yourself in the dishonor of your father, for your father's dishonor is no glory to you. For the glory of a man is from the honor of his father, and a mother in dishonor is a reproach to her children. My son, help your father in his old age. It's a bit selfish.
I mean, that's just the thing that my grandparents asked me that all the time.
Yeah.
To take care of them, and my parents are like, hey, make sure to help us in your old age. And I'm like, I'm going to anyways.
Mm-hmm.
But it's just interesting how I just figured that was like a regular thing.
Yeah.
Like I didn't think there had to be like a religious instruction.
I think in the New Testament, when we get there, they'll have a lot of themes that are more pro mother, father, follow their wisdom kind of deals.
Well, there's a lot of stuff that you would think is just a regular thing, like not murdering people.
Yeah, exactly.
And what is just a regular thing is not raping people.
Also, yes.
Yep. Bible doesn't say anything about that. And don't grieve him as long as he lives. If he fails in understanding, have patience with him. Don't dishonor him with your full strength. For the kindness to your father.
What about half your strength?
Yeah, I don't know about that. For the kindness to your father will not be forgotten. Instead of sins, it will be added to build you up in the scale, presumably. In the day of your affliction, it will be remembered for you as fair weather upon ice. So your sins will also melt away. He who forsakes his father is a blasphemer, and he who provokes his mother is cursed by the Lord. My son, go on with your business in humility, so that you will be loved by an acceptable man. The greater you are, humble yourself the more, and you will find favor before the Lord. Some manuscripts add, many are lofty and renowned, but he reveals his secrets to the humble. For the power of the Lord is great, and he is glorified by those who are lowly. Don't seek things that are too hard for you, and don't search out things that are above your strength. Think about things that have been commanded you, for you have no need of the things that are secret. Don't be overly busy in tasks that are beyond you, for more things are shown to you than men can understand. For the conceit of many has led them astray. Evil opinion has caused their judgment to slip. Some manuscripts omit this verse that I'm about to read.
Which is
verse 25.
Okay.
There is no light without eyes. There is no wisdom without knowledge.
Incredible.
There is definitely light without eyes.
Yeah, also yes. I see what they're going for, but there is in fact
without eyes.
There is in fact light without eyes.
Also, for there to be no wisdom without knowledge, like I mentioned previously,
yes, you did.
Precludes the creation or presence of wisdom at the beginning of creation, because then there would be no knowledge of anything upon which that wisdom could be based. So,
what a wise assessment.
He's very knowledgeable about it, I would say.
I'm sure. A stubborn heart will do badly at the end. He who loves danger will perish in it. A stubborn heart will be burdened with troubles. The sinner will heap sins upon sins. The calamity of the proud has no healing, for a weed of wickedness has taken root in him. The heart of the prudent will understand a proverb. A wise man desires the ear of a listener. That is in direct conflict with what we hear in Proverbs, because in Proverbs,
The fools.
yeah,
Listening, yeah.
it's fools who don't go out and discuss these proverbs to get their true meaning from other people and their discussion of it. Whereas in Sirach, the wise people just get it. There are two more verses. One of them is 30. One of them is 31. Do you want me to read both of them, or do you want me to just read 30 before you do your...
Yeah, just read both of them.
Okay. Water will quench a flaming fire. Almsgiving will make atonement for sins. He who repays a good turns is mindful of that which comes afterward. In the time of his falling, he will find a support. And presumably the support being like God or wisdom or one of the two.
He's going to have some sort of help.
Yeah.
Like if something goes wrong, yeah.
Yeah.
Anyways, true humility shows itself in almsgiving, which atones for sins. In chapter 4, which we'll get to next time, Sirach concentrates readers' attention on giving to the needy. Before the Maccabean revolt, the gap between rich and poor had greatly increased because of tax farming. Individual tax collectors gathered more than was required by their overlords, keeping the excess for themselves, cheating the poor out of their living.
That explains why in Maccabees there was so much, like the letters were always like, oh, we're not going to tax you.
They were always like super skeptical of like the amount that you would have to pay or something.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. The Old Testament had already stressed the importance of care for the poor and oppressed, but the current situation led Sirach to emphasize it. Almsgiving became an important feature of later Judaism. Rabbi Akiba of the 2nd century even remarked that God placed the poor on earth in order to save the rich from hell. Note that to endear yourself to the congregation, 4:7, which we're not getting to today. That'll be for later, but I feel like this is important to cover. Does not mean for Sirach ingratiating oneself with powerful people, but being known for listening to the poor and rescuing the oppressed from the oppressor. Yet Sirach is realistic enough to stress the need for being firm in giving a verdict. Again, the section is rounded off with a specifically religious comment in verse 10. But yes, so the end here of chapter 3, the importance of almsgiving. Yeah, this is why the sections are so weirdly divided. Because it begins there, this whole thing on almsgiving and just, being generous in general. That entire thing begins there at the very end of chapter 3, but it continues through chapter 4. And that's why these divisions are so weird.
Well, that's everything we were going to read today.
Yeah, it is.
So hopefully our viewers have enjoyed it thus far. And if
I
you
sure
have
hope so.
viewers, we have an Amazon wish list full of books.
And by the way, that money that Flip sent in, that's going straight to our donation drive.
That's right. How much? We got $20 added in. So our donation drive, which eventually, once we hit $666 in donations, we will be purchasing a Thetan meter. We will be seeing who is the most clear among us, and we will be taking that sucker apart and figuring out how to cheat it and what makes it work.
And also the answer to how much we have in the 666 drive right now is $42. And of course, once stuff starts opening back up and being places a little bit safer,
then we're going to do our previous donation drive, which was to do alchemy. We're going to attempt to transmute some mineral into some other material, hopefully let into gold.
Yeah. And if we do it, you know what? We'll share the process, I think.
Yeah, we'll show you.
But only to our subscribers.
Yeah.
Like other people won't be able to see because it's just for us.
If it works.
Between you and me.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But
Let's see what
other than that, we got Teespring, we got
Yes.
Facebook, Twitter. Those two are free.
Yeah, but on Teespring we got a lot of cool shirts, and on Patreon, if you become a $10 patron or more, you get entered into a T-shirt giveaway every month.
And if you become a $50 patron, you can be on this show or our Sunday show or any of our other weekly shows. If we ever do any other weekly shows,
Which I think we will.
we will.
Yeah, eventually.
Eventually.
Coming eventually. Something on Saturday.
Yeah. So I think that's a good amount of stuff there. Our Amazon wish list. Did we say that?
Yeah. Oh, and if you're a $1 patron, you get all of our video scripts.
Yeah.
For our scripted videos, not this. We didn't. I mean, I guess we could No, we're not gonna do that.
No, that'd be annoying. Also, it wouldn't be very useful.
Yeah, but for a little more, you can get
all our books.
According to your evidence, unicorns exist by Lawrence Yufa.
You can't get that, or you can opt out of that.
I would definitely opt into that.
If you want to laugh at how really not that intelligent 2015 me was, like how it was just very rudimentary stuff. Very not happy with that, but I wrote the thing and it's there.
Look, it's going to be a piece of history. Once Lawrence completes his task of destroying all religion, the first book that he ever wrote will become a priceless artifact.
My task of destroying religion.
Not the people. We want to emphasize that. Just the belief.
Yeah, not the people.
And through willing conversion away from it, not forced conversion. We also want to emphasize that.
That's what we're about here. We are about destroying these things.
Yeah. I mean, how could I pretty thoroughly destroyed their account of where wisdom comes from?
Well, either way, I think that's all the shilling we have to do. All the stuff we have to note.
Yeah, I think that's it. Wow, this is a really low energy way to end the thing. We will see you on Sunday.